The warm scent of barbecue drifted through the air, lazy and thick like a summer lullaby. The pond shimmered under the late afternoon sun, its surface rippling with laughter, music, and the occasional splash from kids too excited to remember rules. Birds chirped in rhythm with the classic rock playing softly from the speakers, and neighbors stood in small clusters, plates piled with ribs and potato salad. For the first time in a long time, our little corner of the world felt like what it was meant to be, a community. And then the cruisers pulled in. 3 of them. Their black and white silhouettes cut across the gravel driveway like exclamation marks on what had been, until then, a perfect afternoon. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Even the kids stopped mid-cannonball and stared. A hush fell across the crowd, the kind that blankets everything when people sense the beginning of a story they'll be telling for years. But I didn't flinch. I didn't curse or scramble. I didn't even look surprised. Instead, I calmly flipped the next burger on the grill and reached for the manila folder I had been keeping close for precisely this moment. 9 minutes. That's all it took to end the tyranny of Karen Thornberry, the self-declared queen of Oak Ridge Estates. 9 minutes from the moment those cruisers rolled up to when her smug expression crumbled like an over-baked cookie. 9 minutes to peel away the layers of power she had wrapped herself in, layer by layer, until nothing remained but stunned silence. But to truly appreciate those 9 minutes, we need to rewind a bit. My name's David Parsons. I'm 43, I run a consulting firm out of my home office, and I inherited this land, 40 acres of prime woodland, fields, and a glorious 3-acre pond, from my grandfather 15 years ago. That pond isn't just water, it's memory. My grandfather taught me how to fish there. My dad taught me how to skip rocks on its surface. And when Grandpa passed, he left me everything, including decades of neatly organized boxes filled with deeds, maps, tax records, and handwritten letters dating back to 1892, when my great-great-grandfather first bought the land. I built my house on the eastern edge of the property, a modest craftsman that overlooks the pond. I deliberately kept the pond area untouched, a slice of nature I shared with respectful neighbors. Kids learned to swim there. Couples took engagement photos there. Seniors came to birdwatch in the spring. It wasn't just my land. It was a kind of sanctuary, for those who appreciated it. Then came the expansion. Oak Ridge Estates, a tidy development of beige homes and white picket fences, sprang up about 10 years ago, right on the border of my land. At first it didn't bother me. I was busy with work and their newsletters and meetings were just noise I tossed in the recycling bin. I never signed their HOA covenant. Never paid dues. Frankly, I forgot they existed, until Karen Thornberry arrived. If you've never met a Karen in real life, count yourself lucky. Karen wasn't just any HOA president, she was the HOA president. 5'2" of iron-willed fury, clipped vowels, and weaponized passive aggression. She moved into Oak Ridge 3 years ago, clipboard in hand and a vision in her heart, to bring standards to the neighborhood. Within months, she transformed Oak Ridge into a playground for petty citations. Grass 1 inch too high? $50 fine. Trash can visible from the street? Warning letter. Mailbox not painted HOA-approved taupe beige? That'll cost you. She ruled with an iron smile and a laminated copy of the bylaws. I managed to avoid her until 6 months ago, when she finally made her grand entrance, right onto my land. I was down at the pond, teaching my nephew how to bait a hook when she stomped down the hill like some suburban general. Her heels sank into the soft ground, and she waved her laminated law book like it was holy scripture. Fishing is not allowed without HOA-issued permits, she declared, barely masking her glee. I raised an eyebrow and told her, politely, that this was private property. She smiled that thin-lipped Karen smile and said, everything within Oak Ridge Estates is under HOA jurisdiction. That night I went digging. Out came Grandpa's boxes, dusty, musty, and full of secrets. I found it all, the original land surveys, the deed, the property line maps, and even a letter from a county commissioner acknowledging the land boundaries. I wasn't just right, I was bulletproof. And that's when I noticed something curious. Turns out, the HOA's beloved community walking trail? It ran directly through 2 acres of my land. 2 acres. They'd been maintaining it, promoting it, and using it without permission for a decade. No payment. No easement. No nothing. So, I called my old college friend, James Morrison. He's a lawyer with a wicked sense of humor and a taste for poetic justice. When I showed him the evidence, he grinned and said, let her keep walking. Let her think she owns the place. Just document everything. So I did. Every time Karen crossed onto my property with her phone in hand, filming and scowling, I documented it. Every notice she taped to my door about unauthorized gatherings, fishing violations, and imaginary noise complaints, I kept. I even installed trail cams around the pond to capture her unauthorized patrols. Then came the final straw. 3 weeks ago she sent me a formal cease and desist letter, on HOA letterhead, accusing me of violating community codes and threatening legal action if I didn't comply. So, I decided it was time for a party. I sent out invitations to the people who mattered, my real neighbors. The ones who'd lived in Oak Ridge long before Karen's reign. A good old-fashioned Memorial Day barbecue by the pond. No official channels. No HOA approval. Just handwritten invites slipped into mailboxes. 25 families RSVP'd yes. I brought in a barbecue truck. Set up tables, chairs, a little sound system. We had lemonade, cold beer, ribs, watermelon, and homemade desserts from every culture and kitchen in the neighborhood. Kids splashed in the shallows. Adults laughed and danced and played cornhole. And at 2 p.m. sharp, the party began. At 2:47 p.m., Hurricane Karen made landfall. She stormed down the trail, her face a shade of crimson I'd only ever seen on emergency stop buttons. Her clipboard was clutched like a battle standard, and she was already shouting before she reached the first guest. This gathering is illegal. Everyone froze. Music faltered. Karen started barking out violations, no permit. Noise complaints. Unauthorized food vendor. At one point she shouted that our barbecue could attract unlicensed pond activities. I smiled and handed her a burger. That broke her. She stared at the burger like it was poisoned. Then, shaking with indignation, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911, announcing for all to hear that she was reporting an unauthorized commercial event with multiple violations and potential trespassing. As we waited for the cops, I strolled back to my grill, retrieved my folder from the table and waited. 9 minutes later, the cruisers arrived. Sergeant Wallace stepped out first. Tall, calm, with the kind of presence that immediately says, "This won't be your day if you lie to me." I'd met him once before at a charity softball game. He remembered me. That helped. He walked up and said, "Sir, are you the property owner?" I nodded. "Yes, officer. This is my land. All 40 acres of it." Karen, meanwhile, was already mid-rant to the other officers, throwing out legal jargon she clearly didn't understand. I handed Wallace the folder. Inside, the original deed, the current county GIS maps, aerial surveys, property tax records, and a freshly drafted cease and desist letter from James Morrison, ESQ. It was beautifully organized. Wallace flipped through it, his brow lifting a little. After a few minutes, he waved over Officer Bennett. They compared the maps to the patrol car's onboard GPS system. And then it happened. Wallace walked over to Karen and spoke quietly. Her face twisted. She shook her head. She started yelling. Her voice got louder and louder, rising in pitch until she hit a frequency that made a nearby dog whimper. But Wallace wasn't having it. He calmly walked back to me and said, "Mr. Parsons, according to every official record we have, this is your land. All of it. Would you like to file charges for trespassing or harassment?" I declined for now but asked if they could serve the cease and desist letter. And right there with everyone watching they did. Wallace read aloud the key points. That the HOA had no authority on my property. That their walking trail crossed into private land. That Karen was to immediately stop all forms of harassment. That any further claims could lead to civil or criminal charges. Karen's face turned from red to white to a shade of purple that made her look like a malfunctioning mood ring. She sputtered, raged, threatened lawsuits, and even declared the event a civic disgrace. Wallace, now visibly annoyed, reminded her that filing a false police report was a misdemeanor. Then he asked her, politely but firmly, to leave. She did. But not before vowing that I'd regret this. That I'd be bankrupted. That I'd be crushed. Turns out the one who got crushed wasn't me. 3 days later, I got a letter from the HOA's lawyer, attempting to contest the property lines. James responded with a package so thorough it practically glowed. 10 years of unauthorized use. Photos. Legal citations. A proposed back rent total in the 5 figures. They dropped their case in under 48 hours. The following Tuesday the HOA held an emergency meeting. I didn't attend, I'm not a member, but Tom from across the street gave me the play-by-play. Karen tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. But when the treasurer explained that continuing legal action could bankrupt the HOA, the room turned. The vote of no confidence? 38-2. Karen was out. 2 weeks later she was out of a job too. Someone, definitely not me, sent footage of her HOA meltdown and trespassing to her employer. She worked as a compliance officer for a regional bank. Turns out, banks don't like compliance officers who demonstrate flagrant disregard for laws. She was placed on leave. Then came the charge for misuse of emergency services. The day she was served, she sat in her car for 20 minutes staring at the citation. According to Tom, she looked like someone who'd realized too late that her power was never real. That fear and fine print can't beat truth and patience. And me? Well, the walking trail now has a proper gate. I even put up a new sign at the entrance. Welcome to Parsons Pond. Respect nature. No HOAs beyond this point. And every Memorial Day the smoke from our grills rises like a signal, not of trouble but of freedom.